Step 2, Cinema 4D Beginner's Guide and Logo Setup. So, After Effects, new project. Now, to get to Cinema 4D, you're going to go File, New, Maxon Cinema 4D file. This is very important to remember. So, when I click on Maxon Cinema 4D, let's say that you start this project and you don't create it all in one setting, right, one time. You always have to save untitled. So in other words, if I created a Cinema 4D file and I saved it, I cannot open it from After Effects. Okay, so I'm always going to save untitled. And sometimes I'll find, like if I go to desktop, see I have a project that is already called untitled. I'm gonna hit save and overwrite it because it's nothing. If I tried to open Studio 203 or Hartford Whalers or the Crestview logo pregame from After Effects, it would erase everything that I just did or that I have done to it, okay? So just make sure when you open a Cinema 4D project from After Effects, you have to just save it as untitled. So I'm gonna go to desktop and I'm gonna click on logo, the folder, and I'm gonna save it, okay? And if it pops up and says, do you want it already exists, do you want to overwrite it? You're gonna say yes, or else you'll lose all of your work. All right, Cinema 4D, here we go. We can just X out of this. First thing that you're gonna wanna do you see how we have these gray bars here? That means we're not working in high definition. It's not, the default isn't high definition for some reason. So I'm gonna come up here and click on render settings, and I'm gonna change the width to 1920 and the height to 1080. And then I'm gonna lock that ratio and come over here to effects and click on ambient occlusion. I don't even know what that means. I just know that I've learned it helps your renders look better. So I check that and then I X out. Okay, real quick beginner's guide to After Effects here. We are working in 3-dimensional space, right? So we can go up, down, left, right, forward, back, right? And the controls are very important. Up here in the top right hand corner is how you control or get around, navigate the scene. So to make this easier to see, I'm going to drop a cube in the scene. So if I click and hold, I get a whole bunch of options of shapes that I can drop into the scene. I'm going to drop a cube in there, and there are a couple. I can move the cube with these individual axes, points. I can also make it bigger with these little orange dots. I can make it taller and wider in both directions. Okay, now to get around the scene, let's say I'm working on something and I want to see what's over here on this side of the scene. A couple ways I can do that. I can take this rotation button right here, click and hold, and I can rotate around. I'm just holding in my mouse and rotating around the cube. This button right here is going to zoom in and out so I can get closer or farther away, right? And then this button over here will just let me go left, right, up, down, and I can go diagonal too. Now, I'm not moving the cube here, I'm just moving my perspective of how I'm looking at the cube. So I can rotate around the other side and zoom out or zoom in, up, down, left, right, okay? This is how you're going to control how you're looking at your logo once we put it in here. So let's do that. Let's put this logo in. I'm going to delete this cube. And over here on the right side, I'm going to go File, Merge. And I'm going to go to that Logos folder. And I'm going to bring in this Illustrator 8 file called Seahawks Outlines, what we just did. So I'm going to double click. Now, this menu is going to pop up. If connect splines or group splines is checked, you want to make sure it's unchecked. You do not want to bring those in, okay? Or you don't want to bring it in connected as one thing. You want each individual outline separate. So I'm going to make sure those aren't checked and hit OK. Now, it brought it in a little off center here. You can see it's not here in the scene. So what I'm going to do is with the logo highlighted, I'm going to go down to coordinates, and I'm just going to double click and hit 0 and enter, and then double click and hit 0 and enter. And now the logo is in the middle of the scene. I, however, am not because I changed my view, not looking at it correctly. So I'm just gonna rotate around and I'm gonna zoom out. Okay, now you can see it. One of the outlines it brought in was this box, and that's because when I saved it, if I zoom out here, it's counting this black line as an outline of the screen, right? So that's one we can get rid of, and you can't get rid of it here in Illustrator. All right, so now I'm just going to prep this logo. I forget what I called this. Logo setup. I'm going to set this logo up to get ready to be extruded. So depending on how many outlines, this could get very confusing depending on how many outlines you have brought in here, right? I shouldn't have that many. I should have about 8, I think. So what I'm going to do is, this is basically, just think of this as a folder. I'm going to open up this folder called Seahawks Outline, and inside that folder are other folders. I'm going to open up layer 1, and I'm going to open up group 1, and I'm going to open up group 2, group 3, and group 4. Just open up all of your folders, okay? Now, the first path I guarantee is going to be this box, and I can get rid of that. So I'm going to hit path 1, and I'm going to just hit backspace and get rid of it. Path 2 is nothing. See, if I rotate around here, oh, it's an even bigger box. I saw it. If I zoom way out, it's this box here. Do we need that? No, we do not. So I'm going to hit backspace. Okay, and zoom back in, and now everything should be perfect here. So if I click on that, that's good. Good. Okay, what I should do is bring you in an example of something that would be different here. So I'm going to close this up real quick. I'm going to see if I can bring in something. See if I have any. Oh yeah, here, Hartford Whalers. I'm going to bring in this Hartford Whalers logo. I'm going to zero it out real quick. I'll show you what yours might look like, okay? So if I open up the Hartford Whalers folders, you can see how many outlines I have, and there should not be that many, right? So path 1 is again the outline. Path 2, again, an even bigger box. I'm going to delete that. Zoom back in. Now here's what yours might look like. I'm going to hide that for a second. So you're just looking at this. Now, if I click on this, that's good. Path 4. Okay, if you click on one of your paths and it looks like this, where you can kind of see it, that means there's a duplicate. That means when we were at this stage and we just didn't delete all of the duplicates. So you can do that here. Like if I click, see how this has 2? I can just delete that and it's still there. What I need is still there. So it just might be an extra step. If you didn't take care of it here in Illustrator, you'll have to just take care of it now here in Premiere. So if you click on a path or an outline and it's kind of like sort of, you can see it but sort of not, that means it's just a duplicate and you can delete it. All right, I'm gonna close up Hartford Whale, or get rid of that and make sure I can see the Seahawks logo. Now, what you should do at this point is rename all of these things, right? And I might rename. So you always want, you want to make sure your outline or your logo has a complete outline around it. If you don't, it's going to make things difficult. But I'm just going to call this, I can rename this by clicking on the path and then hitting enter. And I'm going to call this I'm going to call it outline. That's my complete outline. This, what should we call that? Let's go back to the Seahawks logo, and I'll call this the dark blue. Call it dark blue, and then click on path 5. We're going to call this gray. Corner panel, I don't know. And then path 6, beak. Hit enter, call it beak outline. And then we'll call this eye outline. And we'll call this, what would we call that? Mouth? I don't know. Call it mouth. and then this would obviously be the I. I'm gonna call it the I. All right. Now what you need to do at this stage is get all of these paths out of these folders, okay? So since all of these are under group 4, I'm gonna click, hold, and drag to highlight all of them. And then I'm just going to click, hold, and drag them out of that folder. So I'm just dragging down to get out of that folder, right? I'm gonna do that same thing with these two, just dragging down so that I have an arrow facing left. Like if I were to drag it over top of this and get a downward facing arrow, that means I would be putting it underneath that. So they would be children, I guess, of this parent. We don't want that. So I'm gonna Control Z that. And I'm just gonna drag them down so they're on top. Oops. Okay, and then the outline. Okay, and I can get rid of all of this other stuff. So if I hit Seahawks outline, because there's nothing in these folders anymore, so I'm gonna hit backspace, and I'm left with just these outlines. At this point, right before we're almost done with this part of the assignment, think about what we're about to do here. We're about to make this 3-dimensional. Like right now, this button right here will preview what you have done. If I previewed this right now, it's just a black screen because there's nothing. These are just outlines. They're not, I've given it no geometry whatsoever. To get out of that, by the way, you just click on the screen or anywhere. So these are really non-existent. They have no geometry to them at all. They're just invisible lines, basically. So what I want to do is think about what order these things are going to go into and then group them accordingly, right? So the outline is obviously going to be on top because everything is going to stick out away from that. So if I turn it to the side here, I'm going to move everything else this way over here so that it's on top of that. That might not make sense right now, but it will once you extrude all of these things. So if I go back and look at this logo, so the blue is going to be away from the white outline, and then the white is going to be away from the blue, like closer to the camera, basically, is what I'm saying. So if I put all of the white stuff, which would just be the beak at this point, beak outline, I'm going to move up under outline and mouth. That's it. Okay, and then the dark blue, dark blue is going to be underneath outlines. There we go. And then this, and then the gray corner can be by itself, and that's fine. Okay, so you have, if you're at that point, you have completed the beginner's guide and logo setup.